Welcome to Whispers of the Night. Tonight, we invite you to step into a world where paintings breathe, where rain dances, and where the quiet of night carries stories you can feel. Settle into a comfortable space. Allow your body to relax. Let your mind soften, and let the gentle rhythm of the evening surround you. Hear every sound, every shadow, and every flicker of light has a story to tell. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, leave behind the noise of the day. You are here in a place of calm, a place of imagination, a place where art comes alive. And now, let us begin the journey into the painting that moves at night. Before we begin, take a moment to settle fully into your space. Close your eyes if you wish. Let your shoulders release any tension. Feel the weight of your body. Feel your feet grounded and your hands resting gently. Inhale slowly and exhale. Let your breath find its own calm rhythm. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the quiet beating of your heart. Allow your mind to soften the world outside may be moving quickly, but here, we move gently, slowly, with ease. Imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a quiet gallery, polished floors stretching beneath your feet. Walls lined with paintings that shimmer softly in the light. The air is cool, calm, welcoming. Outside, rain falls lightly, the distant sound of water, and somewhere far off, the faint whisper of wind. Take another slow breath. Feel the calm of the evening settle over you. Feel the rhythm of the world, soft, steady, comforting. And now, with your mind open, your body at ease, we step together into the story, the world of the painting that moves at night. The painting that moves at night. The gallery awaits. Zora arrived at the National Gallery just as the evening began to soften the city outside. The day's sharp edges had dulled into something quieter, something almost tender. The stone steps beneath her feet still held a trace of warmth from the afternoon sun. But the air had cooled enough to make her draw her shawl closer around her shoulders. The great doors stood open, inviting rather than imposing. And when she crossed the threshold, the sounds of the world traffic, distant voices, the restless breath of the city fell away as if they had been gently closed behind her. Inside, the gallery breathed silence. It was not an empty silence, not the kind that presses against the ears, but a living hush, layered with echoes of footsteps and the faint rustle of fabric. The ceilings rose high above her, vaulted and pale, catching the soft glow of carefully placed lights. Each lamp seemed to cradle its portion of the room, illuminating walls and frames without glare, as though the light itself had been trained to respect the art it revealed. Shadows gathered in corners and along the arches, calm and untroubled, like pools of still water. Zora paused just inside, allowing her eyes to adjust and her breathing to slow. She had always loved this moment, crossing from the ordinary into a space devoted entirely to looking. Here, time seemed to stretch, to loosen its grip. No one hurried, no one demanded. The gallery existed for patience. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished floors as she began to walk. The stone beneath her shoes reflected the lights above in long, muted streaks, like moonlight on a quiet river. Each step felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. She passed familiar works first, paintings she had seen before on other visits, their presence reassuring. Portraits watched her with calm, unreadable expressions. Landscapes opened into distant hills and imagined skies. Still lifes rested in their eternal arrangements. Fruit forever ripe, glass forever catching the same slant of light. There were only a few other visitors scattered through the rooms, their movements slow and respectful. A couple stood side by side, heads inclined toward a large canvas. An elderly man leaned slightly on his cane as he studied a small painting with intense focus. Somewhere far down the hall, footsteps faded, then disappeared. The gallery seemed to expand and contract around Zora, its vastness balanced by intimacy. She had not come with a map or a plan. She rarely did. Zora preferred to let her steps decide, to follow a quiet pull rather than a printed guide. Tonight, that pull was subtle but persistent, guiding her deeper into the building. Through archways that framed new rooms like scenes in a play. As she walked, she became increasingly aware of the time of day. Evening light from the tall windows mingled with the artificial glow inside, creating a gentle uncertainty about where daylight ended and lamplight began. Outside, the sky must have been shifting through blues and grays, but in here, the transition was softened, stretched thin. She turned into a long gallery where the walls seemed to recede endlessly, each one lined with paintings that told of movement, of weather, of change. This room felt different. The air itself seemed to hold a quiet tension, as if something were waiting to be noticed. Zora slowed. At the far end of the room hung rain, steam, and speed. She did not approach it immediately. Instead, she felt its presence first, a subtle weight, drawing her attention even from a distance. The painting did not announce itself loudly. It did not demand admiration. It waited from where she stood. It was a blur of tones and motion, darker than the works around it, yet alive with energy. She could sense the rush within it before she could make out its forms. There was something unsettled in the way the colors gathered and dissolved, something that resisted stillness. Zora took a few more steps, then stopped again. She had seen this painting before, many times, reproduced in books and on screens, discussed in lectures and essays. She knew its name, its history, its place in art. Yet standing here, in the quiet of the gallery, it felt unfamiliar, as though it were waiting to be encountered anew. The polished floor carried her reflection faintly, broken and elongated, leading toward the painting like a path. The lights above were carefully angled, ensuring the canvas was evenly lit, yet there was a softness to the illumination, as if the painting absorbed light rather than reflected it. She stepped closer. At first, her eyes caught the broad impression, the surge of motion, the sense of speed cutting through rain and mist. The bridge arched across the canvas, solid yet almost dissolving into the atmosphere around it. Everything seemed to be in flux, caught between clarity and obscurity. Zora's breathing slowed as she stood before it. She could hear the faint hum of the building, the distant whisper of air moving through vents, but these sounds felt far away. The painting drew her inward, narrowing her awareness until it was focused entirely on the world contained within the frame. She began to notice the subtleties. The rain was not merely suggested, it was present in the way the paint softened edges, in the way forms bled gently into one another. It felt as though the canvas itself were damp, holding moisture in its fibers. The steam rose in pale veils, neither fully solid nor entirely transparent. Hovering between states, her gaze followed the line of the train, its dark mass slicing forward with unstoppable momentum. It did not appear sharply defined. Instead, it emerged from the haze, powerful precisely because it was partially concealed. Speed was not shown through crisp detail, but through the tension between what could be seen and what slipped away. Zora leaned in slightly, careful not to cross the invisible boundary that separated viewer from art up close. The brushstrokes revealed themselves bold in places, almost reckless, then suddenly restrained. The surface of the painting was alive with movement, every stroke contributing to the sensation that nothing here was truly still. She stepped back again, letting the image reassemble itself from a distance. The chaos resolved into coherence, the blur into purpose. It was as if the painting demanded this rhythm from its viewer, closer, farther, back and forth, mirroring the pulse of motion within it. Something stirred in her chest, a quiet unease mixed with fascination. There was a strange feeling, difficult to name, that the painting was aware of her attention, not in any literal sense, but in the way it seemed to respond to her gaze, offering new details each time she looked. Shadows deepened, light shifted. The rain appeared heavier than lighter, depending on where her eyes rested. Zora's fingers curled slightly at her sides. She told herself it was imagination, nothing more. After all, this was what great art did. It invited participation, drew the viewer into an active relationship with the image. Yet the sensation persisted, a faint sense of exchange. She noticed the tiny figure near the front of the train, barely visible, almost lost in the sweep of motion. It was easy to miss, overshadowed by the power of the machine and the drama of the weather. Once seen, however, it anchored the scene, a quiet reminder of scale and vulnerability. Her thoughts drifted, unbidden, to evenings like this one times, when the world outside felt distant, when she herself seemed to exist between moments, not fully anchored to past or future. The painting seemed to echo that in-between state, capturing motion without arrival, speed without destination. The gallery around her remained hushed. A distant footstep echoed, then faded. Someone coughed softly in another room, yet none of it broke the spell. The space around the painting felt insulated, as though the air itself thickened here. Zora shifted her weight, her reflection on the floor moving with her. For a fleeting moment, she had the odd impression that the motion in the painting changed in response, that the rain angled slightly differently, that the steam curled in a new direction. She blinked, and the sensation vanished, leaving the canvas as it had always been. She smiled faintly at herself. Still, she did not move away. Minutes passed, or perhaps longer. Time in the gallery had its own pace. Zora continued to study the painting, letting her eyes wander without urgency. Each return revealed something she had not noticed before. A subtle contrast here, a hidden structure there, a rhythm beneath the apparent chaos. The anticipation grew quietly within her, not of something dramatic, not yet, but of discovery. It felt as though the painting held more than it was willing to show all at once, as though it required patience, trust, and repeated looking as evening deepened outside and the gallery lights took on a warmer tone. Zora remained before rain, steam, and speed, unaware that this moment of stillness was only the beginning. The painting waited with her, suspended in motion, holding secrets that would reveal themselves only after the night had fully arrived. The painting in motion. Zora remained before the painting longer than she had intended. At some point, intention itself loosened its hold, dissolving into the quiet act of looking. The gallery no longer felt like a place she was standing inside. It felt like a distant arrangement of walls and lights that existed only at the edges of her awareness. Everything important was happening here, within the frame. And within her, she let her eyes wander again, deliberately slower this time, as though she were learning how to see the painting properly for the first time. The bridge drew her attention first, not because it was sharp or clearly defined, but because it carried weight. It curved across the canvas with a firmness that suggested endurance, yet its form was softened by rain and distance. The stone did not stand apart from the atmosphere, it surrendered to it. Its edges dissolved into mist, as though time and weather had been at work far longer than the moment captured here. The bridge felt less like an object and more like a force-and extension of movement rather than a resistance to it. She followed its arc slowly, noticing how it guided the eye forward. There was no invitation to pause upon it. Everything about its shape suggested passage, crossing, momentum. Even the darkness of it seemed to lean ahead, as though the bridge itself were urging what traveled across it to keep going, never to linger. Beneath the bridge, the river refused stillness. It was not painted with patient clarity or calm reflection. Instead, it churned and fractured, broken by rain and disturbed by the weight and speed above. Light touched the water only briefly, catching on ripples before being pulled apart. Reflections appeared and vanished, never resolving into recognizable images. The river did not mirror the world. It distorted it, reminding Zora that motion altered perception. The longer she looked, the more she sensed depth rather than surface. The river seemed to stretch back into the canvas, pulling the eye inward. It was not a place one could step into easily. It promised cold resistance, a constant shifting beneath the feet. Zora imagined the sound it might make, low, restless, never settling into silence. Then her attention returned to the rain. At first glance, it seemed almost absent, nothing more than a softening of edges, a blur of color. But as she allowed her gaze to linger, the rain asserted itself. It was everywhere. It existed not as individual drops, but as a presence that altered everything it touched. The rain bent light, smoothed outlines, drew colors into one another. It created movement where there might otherwise have been stillness. Zora realized that the rain did not fall in a single direction. It shifted. In one area of the painting, it appeared slanted, driven by wind or speed. In another, it seemed to fall straight down, heavy and persistent. The direction was uncertain, changing subtly as her eyes moved across the canvas. The rain felt alive, responsive, as though it belonged to the moment rather than obeyed fixed rules. Steam rose through the scene in pale, shifting layers. It wrapped itself around the train, the bridge, the air itself. Unlike the rain, which pressed downward, the steam lifted, carrying warmth upward into cooler space. It did not obscure so much as transform. Solid forms lost their certainty within it. Zora imagined standing within that steam, the way it would soften sound, blur vision, make the world feel suspended. She became increasingly aware of Turner's use of light and how little it resembled the light of ordinary experience. There was no clear sun, no lamp, no single source. Light here seemed to emerge from the scene itself, glowing faintly through mist and rain. Brightness did not banish darkness. It blended with it. Shadow was not emptiness, but depth, thick with color and texture. The transition between light and shadow was seamless, like the gradual shift between waking and dreaming. Zora found that when she tried to isolate one from the other, she failed. They existed together, inseparable, creating a sense of constant movement, even where nothing seemed to change. Her eyes searched for the train again, and she realized how easily it could be missed. Despite its power, it did not dominate the painting. Its form dissolved into motion, into speed itself. The engine emerged from the haze, not as a sharply defined machine, but as a dark mass pressing forward. It felt unstoppable, yet strangely vulnerable, partially swallowed by rain and steam. Speed was not shown through clarity, but through loss. The faster the train moved, the less distinct it became. Zora felt that this was intentional, that Turner had painted not what speed looked like, but what it did to perception. The world blurred. Boundaries weakened. Everything became temporary. She leaned slightly to one side, then the other, curious to see if the painting would change. The blurred edges refused to sharpen under scrutiny. They resisted control. But when she softened her gaze, allowing her eyes to relax, the sensation of motion intensified. The painting seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with her attention. Zora began to notice what she might once have overlooked. Subtle variations in tone suggested shifting, whether the rain appeared thicker in some areas, thinner in others, hinting at unseen gusts of wind. In the river, faint shapes appeared, suggestions of reflected forms that never fully resolved. Along the edges of the canvas, shadowy hints of land and structure lingered, half-formed and uncertain. These details did not demand attention. They waited, and when noticed, they felt intimate, as though shared privately between the painting and the viewer. Time seemed to loosen. Zora was no longer sure how long she had been standing there. Her breathing slowed, unconsciously aligning with the rhythm she felt within the painting. Look, pause, look again. Each return revealed something new, something previously unseen. Her imagination began to move more freely. She imagined the sound of the train, not a sharp noise, but a deep, continuous presence, a vibration felt through stone and air. She imagined the bridge humming beneath it, resonating with contained force. She imagined the smell of wet iron, rain-soaked wood, river water churned into mist. For the first time, she noticed the tiny figure near the front of the train, barely visible within the motion. It was easy to miss, overshadowed by speed and weather. Once seen, it altered the scale of the entire scene. The vastness of movement became personal. The power of the machine became humanly fragile. The gallery lights reflected faintly on the surface of the painting, creating moments where Zora's own outline overlapped with the image. Her reflection appeared briefly in the steam, then faded. The effect was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it made her heart beat faster. The boundary between herself and the canvas felt thinner than it had before. She did not step back. Instead, she allowed herself to lean inward, not physically, but with her attention. The painting no longer felt flat. Depth opened within it, pulling her gaze beyond the surface. The motion was no longer something she observed from a distance. It was something she felt, something that echoed in her chest. Her fingers twitched at her side, resisting the urge to reach out. She imagined the coolness of the rain against her skin, the damp air filling her lungs. She imagined what it would feel like to stand on the bridge, to sense the vibration of speed beneath her feet. She smiled softly at herself, aware that imagination could be persuasive, that art had always blurred the line between seeing and feeling for her. Still, the thought lingered. What if the painting was not only showing motion, but inviting it? The idea did not frighten her. It settled gently, like a door left slightly ajar. Zora remained where she was, curiosity awake, senses open, unaware that she was already closer than she realized, not to the painting itself, but to the space between observation and experience, where movement was no longer confined to the canvas. The painting continued to move quietly, persistently waiting for her to notice not just what she saw, but how deeply she had begun to step into it. The world softens. The change did not happen all at once. Zora did not feel a sudden pull or a sharp break from where she stood. There was no moment she could later point to and say, "This is when everything shifted." Instead, the world softened, quietly around her, as though reality itself had decided to loosen its edges. At first, it was the floor. The polished surface beneath her shoes lost its faint reflection. The cool sheen dulled, becoming matte, uneven. She felt it through her soles, before she fully understood its subtle resistance, a texture that did not belong to marble or stone tiles. When she shifted her weight, there was no echo. The familiar, hollow sound of the gallery was gone. Stone replaced polish, not the hard, cut stone of architecture, but something older, worn smooth by time and weather. It felt solid and steady beneath her, grounding rather than alarming. The sensation brought an unexpected calm, as if the ground itself were reassuring her that it would hold. Zora's breath caught not in fear, but in recognition. The air changed next. It grew cooler, carrying a faint dampness that brushed against her skin like a memory. The temperature was gentle, neither cold nor warm, settling around her with quiet ease. When she inhaled, the air felt fuller, heavier with moisture. It tasted clean, touched faintly with the scent of rain and stone and distant water. She exhaled, slowly, watching as the breath left her lips in a pale cloud before dissolving into the mist. It drifted through the space where gallery air had once been still. It did not obscure her vision completely. Instead, it softened everything it touched. Shapes lost their sharpness. Light spread gently instead of falling in harsh lines. The world seemed to glow from within itself. Zora realized she could no longer see the walls, the high ceilings, the framed paintings. The careful lighting, all of it had faded, not vanished abruptly, but dissolved, as though it had never been meant to remain. In their place, stretched open space, layered with rain and steam and quiet motion. She stood on the bridge, now, or perhaps near it. The distinction felt unimportant. The stone beneath her feet was damp, cool to the touch through the soles of her shoes. She could sense its history, its endurance, the countless moments it had carried without complaint. The bridge did not loom, it did not threaten. It simply existed, firm and patient amid movement. Rain fell around her, not heavily, not harshly, but steadily. It touched her skin in fine droplets, cool and refreshing. The rain did not soak her clothes or weigh her down. Instead, it felt like a gentle presence, brushing her cheeks, her hands, her hair. Each drop landed softly, as though it had already lost its urgency. The sound of it filled the air, a constant, soothing rhythm, not loud enough to overwhelm, not quiet enough to disappear. It wrapped around her, creating a steady pulse that slowed her thoughts, eased her breathing. The rain did not demand attention, it offered it. Zora listened. Beyond the rain, there were other sounds, equally gentle. The distant rush of the river below, low and continuous. The soft hiss of steam rising and dispersing. Somewhere far ahead, the muted suggestion of motion, deep, rhythmic, more felt than heard. The train. Its presence was undeniable now, yet still not threatening. The vibration traveled through the stone, subtle and steady, a reminder of momentum rather than danger. It did not rush toward her. It passed as part of the world's rhythm, no more alarming than the rain or the river. Zora realized she felt safe. The thought surprised her, but it rang true. There was no fear tightening her chest, no urge to retreat. Instead, there was a deep, steady calm, as though she had stepped into a place that recognized her and had been waiting. She lifted her hand slowly. The mist brushed her fingers, cool and light. It curled around her skin, then slipped away, leaving behind a faint chill that faded almost instantly. The sensation was delicate, like being touched by breath rather than substance. She moved her hand again, watching how the mist responded, partying and rejoining without resistance. Light shifted around her. It filtered through rain and steam, diffused and glowing. There was no single source, no sun, no lamp, only an even luminous presence that softened everything it touched. Shadows existed, but they were gentle, layered, filled with color rather than darkness. The world felt balanced, as though nothing here was meant to overwhelm. Zora took a step forward. The stone beneath her feet was firm, reassuring. The motion felt natural, unforced. She did not feel like an intruder or a trespasser. Each step was met with quiet acceptance, the world yielding just enough to let her pass. As she moved, the rain continued its steady rhythm. It did not change pace, It did not react dramatically to her presence. Instead, it welcomed her into its pattern, inviting her to match it. Her breathing slowed further, sinking unconsciously with the soft fall of water. She noticed how sound behaved differently here. Nothing echoed sharply. Each noise softened quickly, absorbed by mist and rain. Even her footsteps were muted, blending seamlessly into the environment. The effect was deeply calming, as though the world itself were designed to quiet the mind. Zora paused, closing her eyes for a moment. Behind her eyelids, the world did not disappear. She could still sense cool air against her skin, the damp stone beneath her feet, the constant whisper of rain. When she opened her eyes again, the scene felt even more vivid, as though her senses had sharpened by surrendering control. The river below caught her attention. She stepped closer to its edge, peering through the mist. The water moved steadily, reflecting broken fragments of light that shimmered and vanished. It was not wild or violent. It flowed with purpose, carrying rain and reflection alike. Zora felt drawn to its rhythm, comforted by its continuity. Steam rose around her, drifting lazily upward. It carried warmth without heat, softening the air without obscuring it. The steam made distance difficult to judge. Things felt closer than they appeared, more intimate. The world folded in on itself, creating a sense of closeness rather than confinement. Zora realized that her thoughts had grown quiet, not empty, simply unhurried. There was no urgency here, no expectation. The world did not ask her to analyze or decide. It allowed her to exist. The rain touched her face again, cool against her cheeks. She smiled faintly, lifting her chin slightly to feel it more fully. The sensation grounded her in the moment, anchoring her to this softened reality. Everything moved, yet nothing rushed. The train passed in the distance, its motion steady and inevitable, but it did not pull her with it. It belonged to the world's rhythm, just as she now did. She felt no need to follow, no fear of being left behind. Zora stood there, surrounded by mist and rain, stone and sound, deeply present in a way she had not felt in a long time. The painting was no longer something she looked at. It was something she inhabited, not as a spectacle, but as a refuge. The world had softened around her, and in doing so, it had softened her as well. She remained still, letting the rain and steam and quiet motion hold her, knowing without needing to understand how that she had crossed a threshold, not into danger, but into a place that felt gently, unmistakably alive. Meeting the artist. Zora did not notice him arrive. There was no sound of footsteps, no sudden shift in the air. One moment she was alone with the rain and the quiet movement of the world, and the next she sensed another presence beside her, steady, entirely at ease. She turned her head slowly. A man stood near her, looking out toward the rain-washed distance. He was dressed simply in dark, weathered clothing that seemed to belong to no specific time. His posture was relaxed, his hands loosely folded behind his back. His hair was touched with gray, stirred gently by the damp air, and his expression held a quiet attentiveness, as though he had been watching this scene for far longer than she had. He did not look surprised to see her, nor did she feel startled by him. Instead, there was a sense of familiarity, as though he had always been part of this place, and she had merely taken a while to notice. "The rain has a way of slowing the world," he said at last, his voice low and even, carrying easily through the mist. "It asks us to look longer." Zora studied him for a moment before speaking. "It feels different here," she said carefully, "like nothing is in a hurry." A faint smile touched his lips. "Speed and haste are not the same thing," he replied. "The train moves quickly, but the world around it remains patient." She followed his gaze to where the train passed in the distance. Its presence felt more than seen. The vibration moved through the stone beneath her feet, steady and controlled. "I thought the painting was about motion," she said. "About progress. About how fast everything was changing." "And it is," he said gently. "But not only that." He gestured toward the rain, the river, the bridge. "I wanted to show what happens when movement meets atmosphere, when certainty meets uncertainty. The machine is strong, but it does not erase the weather. It must move through it." Zora watched the rain fall, the way it softened everything it touched. "The rain feels important," she said. "More than just something happening in the background." "It is," he agreed. "Rain dissolves edges. It reminds us that nothing is fixed for long. When we try to hold the world too tightly, it resists. But when we allow it to blur, we begin to see more." She considered this, letting the words settle. The rain continued its quiet rhythm, indifferent yet welcoming. "And the speed?" she asked. "Why make it so hard to see?" He glanced at her then, his eyes thoughtful. "Because speed is not meant to be examined too closely," he said. "It reveals itself through loss of detail, of sharpness, of certainty. When something moves quickly, we do not grasp it by force. We sense it." Zora nodded slowly. That felt true, not just of the painting, but of her own life beyond it. Moments passed too quickly. Feelings arrived and vanished before she could name them. Perhaps clarity was not always the point. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the rain, the machine, and the storm. She said after a moment, "They don't seem to be fighting." "No," he said. "They are meeting." He turned slightly, facing her now. "There is beauty in that meeting. The train does not conquer the rain, and the rain does not stop the train. They share the same moment, each changing how the other is seen." Zora felt something shift within her, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thought finding its place. "So the beauty isn't in choosing one over the other," she said. "It's in noticing how they exist together." His smile deepened just a little. "Exactly." She looked around again, seeing the world differently now. The mist no longer felt like something that obscured vision, but something that invited patience. The motion no longer felt overwhelming, but rhythmic. The fleeting quality of everything, the way rain fell and vanished, the way steam rose and dispersed felt intentional, even kind. "Nothing here lasts," she said softly, "and that is why it matters," he replied. The words settled between them, unforced and certain. Zora felt herself learning, not through instruction, but through attention. She was not being told what to see. She was being guided toward how to see. "Most people rush past moments like this," he continued. "They look without lingering. They want certainty, clarity, permanence. But the world offers itself most honestly, in passing moments, in rain, in motion, in things that refuse to stay still. Zora watched the rain again, noticing how each drop disappeared as soon as it touched the stone. "It feels peaceful," she said, "even though everything is moving." He inclined his head slightly. "Peace does not require stillness," he said. "Only presence." She breathed in the damp air, feeling it fill her lungs, cool and grounding. For the first time, she felt as though she were not merely inside the world of the painting, but in conversation with it. "Thank you," she said. Though she was not entirely sure what she was thanking him for, he did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his attention back to the storm, watching it with the same quiet care she had begun to feel within herself. "Keep looking," he said at last. "The world reveals itself to those who do." The rain continued to fall. The train continued its steady passage, and Zora stood beside the artist, learning not through explanation alone, but through shared silence, how to notice deeply, how to find beauty not in permanence, but in the fleeting moments that asked only to be seen. Under the storm, Zora became aware of the storm not as something above or around her, but as something she was standing within, held rather than exposed. The rain continued to fall steadily, its rhythm unbroken, yet she did not feel vulnerable beneath it. Instead, there was a quiet sense of shelter, as though the space itself had curved gently around her, offering protection without enclosure. Turner stood close by, not shielding her from the rain in any physical way, yet his presence created a pocket of calm. It was subtle, intangible, but unmistakable. The storm did not recede, nor did it grow gentler. It simply seemed to acknowledge them both, adjusting itself to their stillness. Rain touched Zora's hair, her shoulders, her hands. It did not soak or chill her. Each drop felt intentional, soft as breath. She noticed how the rain never struck harshly, never startled. It arrived, rested for the briefest moment, then disappeared, returning to the larger movement of the world. The sensation made her aware of her own body in a new way, as something separate from the storm, but as part of its cycle. The bridge loomed above and beside her, its stone darkened by water and time. It no longer felt like a structure imposed upon the landscape. Instead, it felt grown-shaped, gradually by necessity, weather, and passage. The stone held the memory of countless footsteps, countless crossings, all absorbed quietly into its surface. Zora sensed that the bridge did not resist the rain. It welcomed it, allowed it to trace familiar paths along grooves worn smooth by years below. The river moved with steady confidence. It did not rush, nor did it hesitate. Its surface caught fragments of light-broken reflections of bridge and sky, stretching and reshaping them as it flowed onward. The river sounded deeper now, fuller, as though rain had added its voice to the current. Zora listened, noticing how the sound was neither chaotic nor loud, but layered, composed of many small movements joining into one continuous presence. The train passed again, closer this time. Its motion was unmistakable, yet it did not feel intrusive. The vibration traveled through the stone beneath her feet, steady and controlled, like a heartbeat rather than a roar. Steam rose where heat met rain, curling into the air in pale ribbons that dissolved almost as soon as they formed. The train did not dominate the storm. It participated in it. Rain clung briefly to metal before sliding away. Steam lifted, met cooler air, vanished. Zora watched, aware of how naturally these elements interacted. Nothing here competed for attention. Nothing demanded to be the center. Each element, train, river, bridge, machine existed fully in its role, shaping and being shaped by the others. It feels alive, Zora said quietly. Turner inclined his head. It is, he replied, but not in the way people usually mean. She turned slightly toward him. How do you mean? Not animated, he said, not performing. Alive in the sense that everything here is responding, listening, adjusting. Zora considered this as rain brushed her cheek. The storm did not feel wild or dangerous. It felt attentive, as though aware of its own balance. She noticed how the air moved differently beneath the bridge, how it shifted, slowed, gathered. The space felt held, like the calm center of a turning world. She realized that this was Turner's protective space, not a barrier, not a shelter, but a way of standing within the storm without resisting it. I don't feel like I need to hide, she said. No, he agreed, because you are not opposing it. She watched her breath form faint clouds before fading. Each exhale joined the mist, indistinguishable from steam rising nearby. The boundary between her body and the world felt thinner than ever before, yet she did not feel diminished by it. Instead, she felt expanded. The rain continued its steady fall, tapping lightly against stone, sliding along metal, merging with the river below. Zora noticed how the sound changed, depending on what it touched. On stone, it was soft and hollow. On metal, sharper, fleeting. On water, it disappeared almost instantly, absorbed without trace. She realized that the storm was not one thing, but many interactions happening at once. Turner reached into the pocket of his coat. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. When he withdrew his hand, he held a small paintbrush between his fingers. It was simple, well used, the handle worn smooth by years of touch. The bristles were fine, slightly uneven, shaped by careful attention rather than precision. He held it out to her, without ceremony. Zora hesitated only a moment before accepting it. The brush was light in her hand, warmer than she expected. It did not feel fragile. It felt familiar, as though it recognized her grip. This, Turner said, is how I learned to stay. She looked at the brush, then back at him. Stay in moments like this, he said, when everything is moving. She turned the brush slowly between her fingers, noticing the way the rain touched it, darkening the wood, clinging briefly to the bristles before slipping away. I don't know how to paint, she said. He smiled, gentle and unbothered. You don't need to, he gestured toward the world around them. The brush is not about making something new, he said. It's about noticing what is already here. Zora felt something settle inside her as she listened. The brush did not feel like a tool for control. It felt like an invitation. Attention, he continued, is the quietest form of care. When you look closely, without trying to change what you see, the world opens. She looked again at the rain, the river, the bridge, the train passing steadily through mist. Holding the brush made her see differently. Her gaze slowed. Details emerge, not sharper, but deeper. The way steam curled upward and dissolved. The way rain traced paths along stone already shaped by water. The way motion did not erase stillness, but carried it forward. Zora lifted the brush slightly, unsure what she was meant to do. "Nothing," Turner said softly. "Just hold it." So she did. The storm continued around them, unchanged, yet newly vivid. Zora felt herself becoming part of its rhythm, not directing, not observing from a distance, but participating simply by being present. She noticed how the train's passage altered the rain, how speed bent droplets into slanted lines of motion. She noticed how the river accepted everything without resistance. She noticed how the bridge stood firm, not because it fought the storm, but because it had learned to endure it. "This is harmony," Turner said, as if responding to her unspoken thought. "Not sameness, not stillness, relationship." Zora felt a quiet awe settle over her. She had spent so long thinking of harmony as balance, achieved through effort. Here, it was something that emerged naturally when nothing tried to dominate. The rain continued to fall, the river flowed, the train moved onward, and she stood there, under the storm, holding a simple brush, learning without instruction, without urgency, that mindfulness was not a task, but a way of standing gently inside the world. She did not know how long they remained like that. Time felt irrelevant, dissolved into the steady rhythm of rain and motion. The moment did not ask to be remembered. It asked only to be inhabited. Zora breathed in the damp air and smiled faintly, feeling safe, feeling present, feeling perhaps, for the first time, not separate from the movement of things, but part of a single, gentle moment where human nature and machine existed together, quietly, beautifully, under the storm. Returning to the gallery and night, Zora felt the transition before she fully recognized it. One moment, she was under the storm. Each droplet of rain and curl of mist, a tangible presence, the vibration of the train under her feet echoing in stone. The next, the familiar polish of the gallery floor stretched beneath her, cool and solid. The walls rose quietly around her once more, the high ceilings reflecting the soft glow of overhead lights. The world she had just inhabited filled with mist. Motion and the heartbeat of rainfall had receded, leaving her in the gallery she had known, yet changed. The air was no longer damp or heavy, yet it carried the faint memory of rain, a lingering trace that made her aware of the space in a new way. The mist had vanished, dissolving quietly into absence, and the storm itself had receded, leaving only echoes of movement, rhythm, and light that seemed embedded in the very floor beneath her. She moved slowly, letting her gaze drift across the familiar walls, feeling the gallery absorb her presence, as though acknowledging that she had returned transformed. Her eyes found the painting, rain, steam, and speed, hanging silently on the wall. In the hours she had spent immersed in its world, she had felt its pulse, seen its bridge and river, smelled the rain, felt steam curl around her. Now, standing before it in the quiet gallery, she knew she had experienced something no one else could. The painting remained still and framed, yet for her, it was alive. Its motion, its rhythm, the meeting of machine and storm, existed not only on canvas, but within her memory. Vivid and enduring, Zora stepped closer, each footfall echoing faintly against the polished stone. She did not rush. She wanted to savor every detail, to honor the journey she had taken. She noticed the subtle blurs of light and shadow, the way Turner had captured motion without force, the way the rain seemed to bend and scatter, each droplet following a rhythm she now understood. She could see the bridge stretching across the river, not as a static structure, but as a living part of the scene, softened by rain, shaped by time, its stone worn smooth by the passage of countless footsteps. The river flowed below, reflecting fragmented light and shadow, carrying the storm with it in invisible currents. Her hand brushed lightly against the polished wood of the railing beside the painting. The texture reminded her of the stone she had felt beneath her feet in the storm, grounding her in the present moment. She lifted the small paintbrush Turner had given her, running her fingers along its smooth handle and brushing the fine bristles gently. It was small, unassuming, yet it carried weight beyond its size, a symbol of attention, mindfulness, and quiet presence. She remembered his words. Attention is the quietest form of care. When you look closely, without trying to change what you see, the world opens. The gallery seemed to respond to her reflection. Though the walls were unchanged, the other paintings and spaces felt different. Colors shimmered faintly, brush strokes seemed to breathe, and shadows softened around the edges. Zora understood that she had changed. Her vision had deepened. The storm, the bridge, the train, the river, they had taught her how to inhabit a space fully, to move within it without needing to dominate it, and to perceive the fleeting details others might overlook. She lingered in front of Turner's painting longer than she meant to. She traced the movement of steam rising from the river, the way the rain hit the bridge and slid along its stone surface, the rhythm of the train that moved through mist and shadow without disturbance. Every element had a pulse, a life that existed when it was observed closely. Her hand tightened slightly around the brush, feeling it as a tangible reminder that attention itself could preserve something transient. After a long moment, Zora turned toward the gallery doors. The evening outside awaited, calm and cool, a gentle continuation of the world she had just left. She stepped outside, the city streets quiet under the soft glow of lamplight. Puddles reflected the muted lights, shimmering faintly as if echoing the reflections she had seen on the river within the painting. The air was fresh, tinged with the lingering scent of rain and stone, and she breathed deeply, letting it fill her lungs with the same sense of calm she had carried through Turner's storm. The brush remained in her hand, light but significant, a small talisman of the awareness she now possessed. She walked slowly, deliberately, each step reflecting the rhythm she had absorbed from the storm and the painting. The city was alive but gentle. Sounds were softened by distance and stillness, footsteps echoing lightly, leaves rustling in the breeze, distant cars moving without urgency. It all felt measured, harmonious, as though the city itself had paused to mirror the calm she now carried within. Zora's gaze lifted to the night sky. Clouds lingered faintly, scattered and heavy, yet softened by darkness and city light. Through breaks in their formation, faint stars glimmered, small points of permanence against the vast, shifting sky. She felt the same quiet reverence she had felt under Turner's storm, the awareness that impermanence did not diminish beauty, but enhanced it. Motion, change, passing moments, they all contained their own kind of truth. Visible to those who paused long enough to notice, she allowed herself to linger in this awareness, letting the quiet evening sink deep into her senses. The rhythm of rain on leaves, the shimmer of puddles, the faint pulse of distant movement all became part of her experience, part of her understanding. She realized she could carry the storm's lesson with her, in her breathing, in her walking, in the gentle observation of details often overlooked. Turner's brush was more than a keepsake, was a reminder that the act of noticing, fully and patiently, could hold a kind of magic all its own. The city streets stretched before her, empty enough for her to feel untethered yet safe. She walked, each step deliberate yet unhurried, the memory of mist curling around her, of rain sliding over stone and metal, of the train vibrating through the bridge, all of it remained vivid in her mind. And yet, it blended seamlessly with the calm of the evening, creating a harmony she could inhabit without strain. She glanced back at the gallery one last time, its softly glowing windows, a quiet beacon in the night. She had stepped into a living painting, felt its pulse, and returned. And though she would leave the gallery soon, she carried the essence of the storm, the rhythm of rain, and the gentle guidance of Turner within her. The brush rested in her hand, a small but enduring reminder of what she had learned, that beauty exists in attention, in presence, in observing without grasping, and in allowing the world to move around and through you without fear. Zora felt the calm settle deep into her chest, a warmth that spread gently with each heartbeat. She allowed herself to exhale fully, releasing any remaining tension, letting the quiet rhythm of the night envelope her completely. She walked under the soft glow of streetlights, past reflective puddles, past rustling leaves, carrying Turner's gift, carrying the knowledge of fleeting moments made permanent by observation, carrying the profound peace that comes from having witnessed life in motion without needing to interfere. The night itself seemed to recognize her awareness. Light and shadow played softly along the pavement, echoing the patterns she had seen on the river and bridge. The gentle rustle of leaves mirrored the movement of mist curling around stone and water. The distant hum of the city moved with the same subtle rhythm as the train she had watched, the same cadence as the storm she had stood within. Every element felt connected, harmonious, welcoming her presence rather than demanding it. Zora lifted her gaze once more to the sky, inhaling the cool night air, carrying with it the faint scent of lingering rain. She smiled softly, feeling a profound reassurance settle over her. The world was vast, alive, and moving, yet she was not separate from it. She had returned, but she also carried with her a new way of seeing, a quiet strength, and the gentle, grounding magic of Turner's guidance. And as she walked further into the calm evening, holding the small paintbrush in her hand, she felt ready to move forward, present, attentive, and at peace. With the rhythm of the storm still echoing softly in her mind, guiding her steps, her breath, and her awareness, carrying her gently into night. for joining us and stepping quietly into the night. Carry with you the gentle rhythm of rain, the pulse of motion, and the calm of observation. Remember the small moments, the details that often go unseen. Let the soft magic of this story linger with you, asterisk, and may your evening be peaceful, your night serene, and your dreams gentle.